The Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'm really pleased to support the Charities Amendment Bill through the committee stages. This bill started off as part of a Statutes Amendment Bill. As you will know, Mr Chairman, and I'm sure other members of the House know, Statutes Amendment have some particular criteria that must be reached before changes contained within the Statutes Amendment Bill can be included. They're meant to be a small number. You're not meant to do a big raft of changes to any particular act. They're meant to be technical, so no policy changes. They're meant to be non-controversial. So if you meet that criteria, then your proposals as a minister can go into the Statutes Amendment Bill. And that's how the Charities Amendment Bill started its passage in the House. When it was received at Select Committee as part of the Statutes Amendment Bill, there was suddenly a flurry of activity of people, primarily from hui and charitable organisations, who were adamantly opposed to the provisions that were contained within the Statutes Amendment Bill. As soon as our committee was alerted to that fact by dint of emails and submissions and phone calls and visits, they were pretty upset and concerned. We decided that we would no longer accept these provisions as part of a statutes amendment. Clearly, with the controversy, they didn't meet the criteria, but in good faith to the minister, who we do not believe was trying to trick anyone, but we believe was legitimately trying to progress what she thought was statutes amendment provisions, we decided to progress this as a separate bill. The alternative for the committee is just to say, no, strike it out. And we would have done that if we thought it was a problem. Scott Simpson's getting very energised by the speech. Yeah, but that's what happens after big quakes. You get a lot of aftershocks. Just carry on. Keep calm. But we thought the minister had introduced these provisions in good faith, so instead of striking them out, we said we'll put them in a separate bill, and thus the Charities Amendment Bill has come to the House. So there were 4 clauses in it originally. The aim of those clauses was to provide that a person couldn't be an officer of a charity if they'd been convicted of tax evasion or a similar offence under the Tax Administration Act that had been admitted, not clarified previously, to provide that an application for registration as an entity could be treated as withdrawn if an applicant doesn't respond to a request for information or some other requirement by the Chief Executive under Section 18 of the Act. So if they just don't reply and don't provide the information that's required, then they can have their application treated as withdrawn. And the third provision that covered 2 clauses in the original Act were to correct 2012 drafting errors, and it was in the second of those 2 that the controversy arose in the first place, caused this bill to be carved out of the Statutes Amendment, and then was the subject of nearly all the submissions to the committee. Nearly all of them on this bill were in opposition to the proposed changes in Section 61, and as my colleague Porter Williams explained, the submitter's view, which was contested by the officials but in the end agreed to by Labour and Green members of the committee, was that it took away their right to appeal a decision of the Chief Executive. Their view is that that right has always been there. It may not have been used, but it was there in the law and they didn't want it taken away. The other changes were not contentious. We believe that they met the requirements of a statutes amendment. And Mr Chairman, the Minister might want to comment on this, but we were advised during the process of this that even though we had carved this bill out of a statutes amendment bill and named it against its own primary act, that if changes were to be proposed to the bill that we are now debating, so if in the Committee of the Whole House an SOP was brought, then it would have to get the agreement of every single Member of Parliament, because it's still under statutes amendment, even though it's been carved out. And I think that's really interesting. I've got no idea if that is agreed, or understood to be the case by everyone. But that was certainly the advice that we have given. So we've taken one of the 4 clauses out. I hope the Minister understands that we did it in thinking we were doing the right thing and that we progressed the rest of the bill to her satisfaction.
Jan Logie.